just going to say hi to folks in the chat. Hey, Ace, thanks for tuning in. I know that you should be on vacation.
Should be sleeping. But we appreciate the support.
Right, we do. We do appreciate the support. Also, hey to Tanya and hey to Angie. Y'all might have noticed. Well, first, let me just say, if you're tuning in for the first time, this is a weekly Twitch stream we do where we talk to different professionals in the SSI industry, just to learn a little bit more about digital identity and how we will eventually move across the web. You all might have noticed it's a different co-host today. It's Ebony. Do you want to introduce yourself, since we usually have Ace or Wale on the stream?
Yeah, so I'm Ebony. Some of you may have seen me in the comments. I used to be our technical community manager, and now I'm a developer advocate. So you'll be seeing my face more. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm excited for this stream.
Yeah, and let me publicly congratulate you as well for moving to community management to dev advocacy. And then also we got Tanya as our community manager now.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, without further ado, I do want to bring up our guest on the stage today. I'm really excited for this. I feel like it's a really interesting topic. Carsten, do you want to go ahead and quickly introduce yourself for everyone?
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me on your great show. And my name is Carsten Stöcker. I'm a physicist. So I worked for 13 years for a big consulting company, for Accenture. And I think this is pretty relevant to the work I'm doing now, because I worked across multiple industries, from oil and gas to agriculture, resources, utilities, financial services, pharmaceuticals. And especially in the state of the current product market fit of SSI, it's really important that you engage with a couple of industries, find out where the adoption happens first, and then a bit of, let's say, industry business acumen always helps. It's from my time with Accenture. I worked for utility. At the utility, this was around 2014, so exactly 10 years ago. I worked on technology-driven business model innovation, and primarily around emerging technologies such as cryptography, machine learning, IoT, and blockchain. And this is how I got in the blockchain world. And then I founded Spherity. So Spherity is the venture I founded together with a friend of mine. And at Spherity, we look into digital identity solutions for regulated industries, such as pharmaceuticals, financial services, automotive, and energy. And today I will bring a different perspective, I guess, to the identity discussions in the blockchain world. It's primarily the perspective from B2B regulated industries, and what are the requirements, what are the use cases, what are the ecosystems, what is the investment that's going in this technology and for B2B use cases. And that's a bit what we discussed today. Yeah, happy to discuss it with you, Rizel and Ebony.
Awesome. We're excited. Before we dive super deep into that, I'm going to do a little fun question to start, and then I'll let Ebony ask some of the other questions. I just do this to connect with you and then also the audience. So I asked a little bit, it's light controversial, not very controversial, but do you consider listening to audiobooks as reading? Some people say that's not reading. Some people say they do. So what do you think, Carsten and Ebony?
I'll let Carsten go first.
Yeah, it's a kind of different reading. It's reading with your ears. And what I personally like with audiobooks, you can hear them when you're driving, when you have some free time and just want to relax. But it's not reading, because in reading you can skip text super fast. You can jump from one paragraph to another. I love Flipboard. I love Flipboard reading. Do you guys know Flipboard?
No.
I've never tried that.
You must do Flipboard, if it's either crypto or not. So this is basically the Flipboard app, yeah? And you basically say, hey, I'm interested in machine learning, I'm interested in crypto, I'm interested in whatever policy, I'm interested in Donald Trump or not, and you just flip the, okay, you also, no, sorry, I flipped it away, and you get also some advertisement, and this is kind of reading I like, yeah. So I get a lot of, you see, I get a lot of technology stuff. Yeah, that is fast reading, and you cannot do this with an audiobook. You flip and then you zoom in the content that inspires you, and that's whatever. necessary for your work. Just read it.
I've never heard of it before, but that's cool. I've never heard of it before.
Yes, it's good for your personal education. Work-life, no, I think people talk about work-life integration. You can also do education-life, work integration. It's really nice. Yeah.
I love it. And you have another person here who's saying they love using it too. Voc Rocks is saying Flipboard is cool. So far, it looks cool to me. I've never used it though. Ebony, what about you?
I've never used it either or heard of it, but that is really cool. It makes me think of TikTok. Like, you know how you get that, like, you get to scroll through different things. So, but like a smart one, you know what I mean? Not the drama, the smart
TikTok
one.
for reading.
TikTok for reading. For me, I feel like audiobooks is just not the same as reading, but I'm also being a little ignorant because I've never tried it, but I love reading. Like, I'm obsessed with reading. I love it. So I just can't imagine not like holding a book or holding my Nook and then like just listening. I tried to think through the process and I can't get behind it.
Angie hates holding physical books. Oh my
God. That should be an illegal statement. I love the smell of the books. Like when you like go through the pages, it smells so good.
Yeah.
I can talk for days. I love reading. So
I think I'm on Tanya's side, where when I was a kid, I like grew up reading so much, hanging out in the library, but I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's because of like as much social media consumption as I'm doing. Like my brain can't focus on like seeing words on a page for very long. So I will like hold the book, but also have my audiobook. And I like what Carsten's point was, where like I could be doing something else. Like I'll do something like a little mundane, maybe like washing dishes or folding clothes, and I'll be like hearing it. So I don't consider it reading, but I'm still consuming information. The pages don't feel good on my fingers.
What? No. I've actually never heard that before. I don't know. But I'll take it. No, I love books. I'm not going to hear any more slander on it. I love it. It's the best thing ever.
Me too. Ebony, I'll let you take the next question to guide us into our conversation.
So Carsten, you gave us a really good intro on like your journey into like working at Spherity and stuff. And as we did our own research, we saw that you've done some podcasts and stuff. And we know that you're a leader in the SSI space, or self-sovereign identity space, people I don't know. So we wanted to know like what sparked your interest? Like what was the moment where you were like,
I remember one specific moment. This was, I think, in 2015, where I basically figured out with all the Ethereum stuff, combining a blockchain, let's say, infrastructure with IoT and all the fantastic use cases. And when you connect, let's say, IoT to a blockchain, this is a lot about identity of the IoT device, identity of the persons that would like to access the the IoT device, identity of content that's being produced, authenticity of the content, integrity of data, and all this kind of stuff. And I was sitting there and basically had this kind of enlightenment that's pretty cool, combining kind of blockchain, identity, and IoT. And you can put it in satellites, in submarines, in 3D printers, in cars, do a wallet in a car, in charging stations. And at this point in time, this was pretty awesome to have this kind of this enlightenment, what you could do with it. And there was a common theme in all these kind of use cases, by the way, including sex toys. You can think about putting identity to sex toys and have authenticity and then you connect to someone else, have a joint experience over the internet. This is also to do with identity, all this kind of stuff. And the key learning was that it's really useful to have an identity registry for lookup, for anchoring identifiers, cryptographic key materials, endpoints, for anchoring trust lists, revocation lists. And this is when I basically said, hey, this needs to be investigated. The first use case I did, I don't know if you guys know, of course you know Ethereum. I spent a lot of time in the Ethereum developer office in Berlin at this time. I met the Slockit guys. And the Slockit guys, the name of the company was Smart Lock. That was the reason why Slockit. And they said, hey, let's do the sharing economy, connect a smart lock, connect identity with a blockchain. I do an escrow payment and then can decentralize Airbnb. Yeah, like I do an escrow payment, I rent an Airbnb on a blockchain. I go there, authenticate myself with a smart contract. I did the escrow payment. The door opens, I can use it, I leave. So this is what the login people did. And at this time, I happened to work as a utility and said, that's cool. Let's put the idea of kind of using blockchain for access control in a charging station and connect the car. And at this time, I think it was 2016. So we set up our own stablecoin. So we worked with a bank, kind of digitized the euro. We didn't call it a stablecoin because this term didn't exist. So we basically said, hey, let's tokenize the digital euro. How did we call it? I think we didn't call it digital euro. I forgot how we called it. Yeah. But anyway, with digital euro, and then you can do an escrow payment to a charging station. Yeah. And then at this point in time, the charging station knew, someone paid me something in advance in an escrow payment. Now I can start the charging process to a car. And and the car knows if the charging station doesn't charge, then I get my money back because it was an escrow payment. And this was a decentralized peer-to-peer kind of charging transaction. We even retrofitted the entire fleets of charging stations by basically connecting a backend of a utility, a charging station backend, to Ethereum blockchain, so that people could charge with digital euro on the Ethereum blockchain in 2016 already, or 2007, I think 16. This was pretty awesome, but there was no product market fit at all, way too early. And then I decided, hey, let's go a couple of steps back. Let's look in the most simple identity use cases and build a company around this. And this is what we do with Spherity.
Wow, that's a lot of different use cases. Like I've never really thought of. Like you talked about like checking into Airbnb, even like sex toys, which is something that's taboo, I guess, but it's like that technology is needed too. So I'm like, wow, this is so interesting. I'm curious. Okay, so
in all these use cases, you need identity. Yeah, in all these use cases, you need identity. Connecting actors that have never met before. Yeah, if you have your Tinder whatever experience, and then you probably have not met the other person. But if you would like to have an authentic experience, you need identity, and this is really the strength, even from a mathematical perspective. The combinatorics, the three meet of us building a system where n people can meet, n random people out of 8 billion to connect to do something. Then we have the IoT devices. Impossible. But if you do it decentralized, you can authenticate, authorize. So this is possible, and that's what we like. What we think is very awesome, to have a system where previously unknown actors, system actors, human actors can connect, can establish trust and build a relationship, do a business transaction. That's what we really found very awesome. Yeah.
Wow. And so what? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ebony. I think you. No, I was just gonna say, like, it's crazy to like think about like just how there's, like you said, there's so many different use cases that I would have never even thought about before, like joining TBD and like learning about the SSI space. Like you just don't think of it as an everyday like person going on about your day. You just don't think of that identity layer. So really cool. Really I agree. And I think what really, like when I saw your company pop up on my LinkedIn, I was like, whoa, I didn't realize that the pharmaceutical industry needed any type of like identity or verifiable credentials. So I'd love for you to kind of just talk to us about like how the Drug Quality and Security Act like industry, like how the supply chain happens, because I have a surface level of understanding.
Before I share something on my screen, have you seen Silk Road, the movie Silk Road?
Oh,
so you must watch the movie Silk Road, because this is the guy who set up a peer-to-peer market for a marketplace dealing drugs. He said, hey, we can't trust the government, we have to do our own. And then he learned about the Tor network, about Bitcoin. He assumed that Bitcoin is an anonymous payment tool. It's not, it's pseudonymous. And he set up the marketplace and said, hey, we have perfect privacy now. And we do a peer-to-peer drug marketplace platform that was called Silk Road at this time. And then people kind of traded drug, methadone, a couple of other things, peer-to-peer in the darknet. And this was around, I think it was around 2014, in a way before, I think 2013, I think the platform was earlier, but around 2013, the FBI caught the guy. And and this is a pretty awesome story. You have to watch the video, and there's a United Nations database called Sherlock, and then you look for Silk Road and for the guy. Unfortunately, I don't know his name right now. And then you can read the story of the guy and the peer-to-peer drug trading marketplace in the darknet. But what is interesting, and that's the reason why it's connected to what we do, this is a controlled substance. Drugs, cannabis, methadone, morphine, that's so-called controlled substances. And when people start to sell and buy the controlled substances, and maybe even with fake pharmaceuticals, then you have a problem. The idea of the Drug Supply Chain Security Act in the US is to make the pharma supply chain as secure as possible so that fake drugs cannot enter the supply chain. And I think there are a couple of problems around this. For example, methadone, morphine, it's expensive. You have a lot of people that are suffering severe pain, and then you don't have a real health system. You don't get the prescription. And then as a result, not many people get prescriptions for methadone and morphine, which is really bad, because I think a couple of few 100,000 people get prescriptions, but there's a need for a couple of million of people. And then people kind of try to buy some of these substances on the street, and the cartels are not even selling kind of hard drugs. They are also selling methadone or whatever, methadone of poor quality or whatever. And they try to sneak in fake drugs. And then this has big impact to patient health. And that's the idea of the so-called Drug Supply Chain Security Act, to make pharmaceutical supply chains secure so that only authentic drugs are being sold. Yeah, and this has a lot to do with authenticity. And when you sell the authentic drugs, then you have less problems with the fake drugs and less impact on patient health. And that's a big idea. Yeah. At the same time, it was 2014, the Obama administration endorsed the so-called US Drug Supply Chain Security Act. It's one of the most advanced regulations in terms of supply chain, in terms of security. And as a result, now the US pharmaceutical industry has one of the most advanced digital supply chains in the world to protect patient health. Yeah? And I think that's a bit the context. And then we need two types of identity. First, identity of your product, yeah, your physical product, to distinguish authentic product from fake product. And second, you need identity of the companies involved: manufacturers, wholesalers, secondary wholesalers, pharmacies, dispensers, hospitals. Because when people now start to do digital transactions, and I will show it to you how it works, but when they start digital transactions, you would like to know, is it a real pharmacy or fake pharmacy? Is it the real manufacturer or fake manufacturer? Because if you cannot guarantee this, the authenticity and the authorization of your counterparty, then anyone can engage in digital transactions. And then your digital backbone is not pretty secure, because anyone can do stuff. Or let's say some nation-state actors, such as Russians, Iranians, Chinese, North Koreans, they can even do DDoS attacks on your sending fake product verification requests, for example, on your drug supply chain infrastructure. And for that reason, you would like to authenticate the real players, and you would like to authorize them. And the US Drug Supply Chain Security Act, maybe I know, switch to a slide to show it to you, and then we can show the system. The US Drug Supply Chain Security Act provides a couple of requirements. I will only talk, let's say, about 3 of them. So one is that the products get serialized, yeah. And every pharmaceutical package in the US has a machine-readable serialization. Serialization means there's a 2D data matrix. Here you see the 2D data matrix. A 2D data matrix, another kind of QR code. And the 2D data matrix includes a product identifier. It includes a batch number. It includes a random serial number and an expiration date. And with this 2D data matrix, now a pharmaceutical product gets an identity. It's an identifier. And with the identifier, you can establish identity of products. And this is extremely important. And now what the Drug Supply Chain Security Act also says, a pharmacist or whatever, or a dispenser, a guy in a hospital, can basically take the product, scan the 2D data matrix, then the technology does a lookup transaction, and I will go back to the lookups in the next step as well, does lookup transaction, finds the service endpoint of the manufacturer. So here it says dispenser can be a pharmacy. I scan it, I do the lookup transaction, find the service endpoint of the manufacturer. And now that's the second use case of identity. Not only product identity of the pharmaceutical product, now it's identity of the manufacturer. Because by law, for compliance reasons, for cybersecurity reasons, now by law, the manufacturer, before the manufacturer responds to the request of a pharmacy, for example, they must check whether the request is coming from a so-called authorized trading partner. So this is what was written in the law. They can only engage with authorized trading partner. Authorized trading partner is another word for license to operate. So does the pharmacy has a license to sell drugs? Yes or no? Because I can only engage with the pharmacy if they can prove they have a license to operate. Otherwise, whatever, let's say some Russian threat actors in the cyberspace, they can also send a lot of fake product verification requests to the manufacturer. And if this happens, the entire compliance system is DDoSed and everything breaks down. Yeah, so this you don't want to have this. And for that reason, the law is saying you must check, does the requester of a product verification request, do they have a license to operate or not? If they have a license to operate, then I, as a manufacturer, allowed to send a response, so whether it's an authentic product or not. And I also, by law, I'm obliged to prove that I have that I'm an authorized trading partner, have a license to operate. So which means the pharmacist, he will get another authorized trading partner credential, in this time from the manufacturer, and then they can prove that they got the response from an authorized trading partner. Yeah? And this is what the law is saying, yeah, in terms of you have to check your product authenticity. You must establish a product verification infrastructure, including the lookup, and you must establish authorized trading partner mechanisms to prove that the partners that engage in the digital sphere have a license to operate or not.
Wow. And I feel like that was a lot for me. Like not a lot, but like very interesting, where I'm like, I didn't realize that there's so many different steps within this process. I didn't even realize that. I think you mentioned the Obama administration kind of
Yeah.
emphasized the need for this. I didn't realize none of this existed before. There is a question here that we can get into before me and Ebony kind of discuss tbDEX a little bit. So basically, a question from Discord for you, Carsten, is how is the step verify if requester is who they say they are done? Who authorizes trading partners? Assuming it's a government agency.
Yeah. Now, and this is all very awesome. Maybe before I will answer this, I must say there was a company called they focused in 2014. They focused on blockchain and IoT. Yeah, I think the guy's name was Ryan Zelkis, who kind of founded it. I forgot. Unfortunately, don't remember the name. It was super prominent in these days. Yeah, and these guys didn't manage to kind of to establish a product market fit for IoT and blockchain, but what they managed to sell MediLedger. Yeah. So if you guys would like to see a blockchain system in operations in an industry, then MediLedger is one of them. And what's very interesting that MediLedger is using blockchain for the lookup. So basically, the pharma people, they're using our product and some other products, but they're also using MediLedger. And MediLedger is doing the lookup, which means I have the identifier. Now I need to do a lookup on a registry where I find the service endpoint. And this is being done on a decentralized Ethereum blockchain. It's a permission blockchain. It's called MediLedger. And if I then do the lookup, I find the service endpoint, and then I can basically talk to the manufacturer. I think this is very interesting because this was, I don't know, maybe 2018 or 19, when people started kind of to work on MediLedger and put this into place. So the pharma people have somehow been kind of, let's say, used to use modern technology. But what I would like to say, why did they decide to use a blockchain for lookup? And this is a very interesting question, because a lot of people don't know about this fantastic value proposition of decentralized ledger technology for lookup. And the reason is, when I have a centralized lookup system and all the pharmacies are doing scanning products, doing a lookup and sending a request to the manufacturer, then the entity that operates a centralized database has full transparency about all transactions going on in the system, which means every scanning transaction from which pharmacy, at which time, which location, which product, from which manufacturer is could be logged in the centralized lookup registry. Yeah, and in the pharmaceutical industry, they decided, we would like to have business confidentiality, and for that reason, we would like to decentralize it. And this fantastic proposition of a DLT, because I basically can run my own DLT node and I have my own local lookup copy of the lookup registry. I do a local lookup, no one else will recognize it because I have to do a read transaction from my own node, and then I can basically retrieve the service endpoint and do this. So that's a bit the blockchain story, how blockchain went in there. And of course, coming back to the question, now you have to find someone who basically does check whether the trading partner is who they claim to be. And there we have a company called Legism. And Legism is doing an identity check. Legism is checking, after they have done the identity check, then they go to all the databases, check the license status of a company, and the data are stored in multiple databases in your 52 federal states in the US. Sometimes it's different formats, different APIs. So it's really kind of, let's say, some work to do. I have the identity, I go to the database, and then I know the license to operate, authorized trading partner status. And when I, as an issuer, so in this case, Legism is an issuer, when I have done this, I can issue an identity credential. So this means the Legism people issue identity credentials in our wallet and issue authorized trading partner license to operate credentials in our wallet. And now when the credentials are here, I can basically kind of connect a product verification request with an authorized trading partner credential and send it back and forth, and people can basically check the authorized trading partner status of each other. But of course, this requires an onboarding process. Whatever is being discussed in SSI, decentralized identity, in all industrial ecosystems, you must have an onboarding process, like check your identity, check some whatever, license status, check some other data, issue credentials, and then people can exchange them. It's also very important, if you look into NIST Zero Trust Architecture, you must read this document because it's talking about how authentication and authorization has to be done in a so-called zero trust world. Yeah, and this is about identity governance. It's about a proof that someone is authorized to do something. It's about credentials, and what we build here is in line with what the NIST Zero Trust Architecture is. And in Europe, all big corporates that are building similar systems for a supply chain, they are all kind of, let's say, adhering to the NIST Zero Trust Architecture principles for authentication and authorization. And then credentials are a very good tool. And when we think about the use case, a hotel check-in, the same stuff, as a hotel. It's not, okay, then I have a human. It's not a machine user, not machine users that authenticate, authorize. It's a human. But the human needs to be authenticated and authorized to get in the hotel or to do whatever, to open a door, to show your driver license. And that's basically similar stuff, but for machine users or for companies, that's being established. And then you need a trust model. So the trust model was endorsed. So we have an open credentialing initiative here. Maybe I show it to you quickly. The open credentialing initiative, it's not open, it's like OCI. So we are very proud of it because we established a trust model together with other players. Yeah, so it's in this case it's the movement. Let me know, we even want a price, blah, 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 all this stuff. Keep you in the loop. It's a bit the trust model. Where do we have the logos of all the companies involved? Maybe it must have moved to somewhere else. Oh shit, about community. I need to go to community.
Community feels like the spot.
Yes, yeah. So here you see it's being governed, blah, blah, blah. But I think this is really interesting community. I hope now we get the logos. I haven't visited our own stuff anymore. Was it spawn? You see some of them. So it's Novartis, it's a couple of smaller players. It's US GS1, it's a Health Distribution Alliance, it's a big, a big industry association. It's a couple of some key players, but it's also a lot of other people that are supporting this. So we basically developed an entire trust model here and a conformance program, which means Legism is a credential issuer. They must adhere to conformance requirements. And for that reason, so we developed an interoperability profile and conformance requirements for wallets, for credential issuers, and for companies. So they're called verification routing service providers. But if they would like to integrate the wallets, they must adhere to conformance requirements. And there's an external third party that's basically doing the conformance audits checks. And only because of this formalization, so we can establish a level of assurance, we can establish trust. And what's the most kind of exciting thing is, there's another industry organization, which is a public-private partnership between the industry and the FDA, and they endorse the trust model. Yeah, and this is pretty awesome. It's not kind of like bottom up, couple of people meet and do something on the blockchain. It's pretty much kind of a full-fledged trust model endorsed by a public-private partnership, which is kind of, let's say, the FDA plays a role kind of to bring this technology into the industry. And these are kind of prerequisites to establish trust in a regulated industry and in a B2B use case. Yeah.
We actually have some questions. And one of the questions are around like security, and that's the question that I wanted to ask next. So I'm going to just highlight it on the screen. How do you manage the security and integrity of QR codes in order to mitigate cybersecurity threats such as QR code spoofing or tampering?
Yeah, okay. This is of course a good question. Of course, QR codes always kind of what people would like to do, but here it's not being done. It's standardized, and I think if you see them on I think we have different security kind of challenges here, because if you're kind of, let's say, arriving at an airport and there's a QR code that say, hey, tourist information, get your discount vouchers, and you scan the QR code, then of course the QR code can direct you to whatever, to a malicious actor, and then it's doing a bypass attack, kind of whatever, then forwards you to another site, but then you're kind of, let's say, your phone might be kind of subject to malware already because of the QR code. Yeah. I think here it's a closed system, because we have QR codes on the pharmaceutical packages. These systems are validated. That's what's being called computerized system validation in the pharma industry. That's a lot of work to get something validated in terms of computerized system validation. And then there are a lot of requirements, functional safety, cybersecurity, and so on. So it's not it's not an iPhone. It doesn't make sense to connect an iPhone to this here. So it's pretty much kind of closed, but then people can scan it, connect to it. But of course, yeah, signed QR codes would be better. Then you check the authenticity of the QR code before you resolve the service endpoint in the internet and send a request there. But the QR code are just standardized. The systems are kind of, let's say, pretty much validated or qualified. So that's how it's being addressed. But of course, if it's in the airport use case, then you might want to work with, let's say, signed QR codes where you have a trust model behind this. Yeah. In this use case, it's not needed. Yeah.
For this one, we're good.
Nice.
Let's see. Sorry, Rizel, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I sent you a private chat. So before I do want to get to more of the questions, but I also want to get to the demo. But before we'll probably save the questions for learn a little bit nearer the end. But before we jump into the demo, and as Carsten is setting up his demo, I did want to just make a quick note, Ebony, that just learning about what Carsten's talking about is kind of very similar to parts of tbDEX, right? Like I see similarities, and then I see like differences where like maybe with Dr. Carsten, there's parts that are more like dependent and reliant on the blockchain. Meanwhile, ours is a little bit more blockchain less. But I could see a place or an area where people are maybe using tbDEX to exchange more than just currency. Because right now, yeah, you can do anything that you wanted. I wanted to know your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I think it's actually like, I'm glad that you brought it up because right now when I think of tbDEX, I just think of it as far as the use case that we have, which is a financial use case, but it's essentially just like a messaging service or like a messaging protocol. And the same way like you're kind of selling drugs. I hate saying it like that. That's essentially distributing drugs to the world. You could essentially be like that, like tbDEX could essentially do that, be that like message, that middleman, so to speak, between like the product, the person that like has the product, and then the actual like end person, the pharmacy or the hospital and things like that. So it's actually really cool to see that there's different use cases for tbDEX outside of just the financial space. And when we were talking about you coming on, we were excited because like, wait, this could actually be another use case that we just hadn't even thought about. So really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that. Carsten, do you want to show the demo? Because I think personally, I'm excited. I'm like, let me see how this.
I want to see how like Caro fits into all that. So
yeah.
So what we basically, maybe I would like to say, so what we're discussing here, we do it with blockchain or without blockchain, and this always depends on the ecosystem. Is this an ecosystem who kind of, let's say, is building upon decentralized ledger technology, or an ecosystem that doesn't want to have decent ledger technology, and then we use the web and some other methods. But I fully agree, sometimes it's with, sometimes without blockchain. It really depends on the ecosystem.
Just all a matter of choice. As long as, to me, I'm like, it's just a choice of technology as long as the job gets done.
Yeah, that's all we care.
Yeah. So basically, this is a wallet. Maybe you can. I think here's a lot of, let's say, specific things such as VRS interactions. That's pretty much the lookup, and then you send the product verification request back and forth among the different supply chain actors. This is a pretty custom requirement, but of course, when you have then an enterprise identity wallets, you can create it's a test system. Yeah, so you can create identifiers, did keys, did web, did ether. So all of this is working. You can get your credentials. You can acquire credentials, and there we have an integrated, basically workflow. You select, okay, in this case, I have multiple identifiers. Then I can select the credential type, and then I can even select the credential issuer. Maybe we start it, but we don't go through the end. Next, now we select credential type. Now we would like to have a DSCS, or let's say an identity credential. And now I select one of the issuers because issuer is agnostic, and then I can start the process. And what's super awesome here, usually now we would switch to the legism system kind of to process the request and to issue an identity credential. But what is really awesome here, then legism would have to do a full KYC check of the enterprise. And if you would like to do it to proper level of assurance, that's a mess, yeah. Fortunately, the Drug Enforcement Agency, they did a lot of work in advance to really accelerate this use case. What the Drug Enforcement Agency did, they did a KYC identity check of many 10,000 supply chain actors in US, the majority of all supply chain actors. They did a KYC check, and then they issued an X509 certificate. Yeah? And what we're doing here, when legism is checking the identity, they can do all the manual work and the checking and the paperwork. It's a lot of work, yeah. Or they ask the supply chain actor, hey, have you already spoken with the DA? Do you have a X509 DA signing certificate? And the supply chain actor says yes. Send me your X509 signing cert. Then the supply chain actor sends it, and this is, of course, not the entire kind of KYC check, but this is the majority part of it. And because the DA did all the groundwork, established already digital identity with X509, so we can basically kind of, let's say, reuse some of the work the DA has done to accelerate the entire process. And this is what I also think is pretty awesome to speed up the process here. Okay, then I have my, let's say, I go back to my dashboard. Then I have my identity credentials, and that's basically, okay, you have many identity credentials and DSCSA credentials. In this case, with DSCSA credential, and it's not expired, it's not revoked. We established a revocation mechanism. So we have fully decentralized setup with the decentralized identifier, with the trust lists on DLT technology, and the revocation lists on DLT technology. When you're in human identity, oh my God, revocation list, and if you're a human identity and in Europe, revocation list on a blockchain, this is personal identifiable data. This is a GDPR nightmare. You don't want to do this. Here it's different. You could establish public revocation lists because the public revocation lists are only mirroring what's being documented and publicly available in the public database of the federal states. But by establishing a public revocation list, then it's pretty, from a system automation and straight-through processing perspective, that's pretty awesome because I have the public revocation list, let's say, on my local, in simple terms, I have the public revocation list on my local node. I do the lookup, is the credential revoked, yes or no, and then I can do straight-through processing to speed up the entire process. This is nice. Yeah, this is basically what we have done here. Then you might have a couple of trading partners, a bit of user management and role management. We can set up some new users, and we can say credential manager, auditor, admin, and this kind of stuff. We don't use SSI for the users. So SSI for the users is built on a standard ERM system. So we don't provide them wallets because there's no need. We use the identity and the credentials only for enterprise identity. And we have this shortcut by basically relying on a standard ERM system for the different roles here. Of course, then a bit of activity log and settings and analytics, user management, and interaction with the blockchain that you see a bit, okay, what kind of interactions have been done on the blockchain. We have payments for paying the gas fees for doing on-chain transactions when I rotate my keys. But of course, we can do any arbitrary transaction with the wallet as well. We don't need it because in our use case, we don't do kind of arbitrary blockchain transactions, sending coins back and forth. We don't do this. But in principle, if you establish such a wallet, this could be done, and a couple of other useful things. So basically, it's an enterprise Web3 wallet with a lot of enterprise compliance requirements, plus customization for the specific use case in the pharmaceutical sector.
Thank you. I love this. I feel like I'm echoing. Sorry, y'all.
No, you're okay.
Okay, cool. But I love this demo because this gave me more insight into more of an enterprise side. I always am thinking more from like the individual user wallet side, but I'm never like really envisioning what it looks from an enterprise side. There is a few comments, and I'll also let Ebony like highlight some of the questions as well. There's a comment here that said, while we're talking about pharmaceuticals, it'd be great if my doctor could just issue my RXs as VCs so I could take it to any pharmacy and get what I need, right? So he wants to get his prescriptions right away, besides being like, oh, I have to go to this particular industry. And then more people are agreeing. But yeah, Ebony, I'll let you take the other question.
Our next question is, do you use any kind of ZKProof technology for privacy and proof of provenance?
No, not yet. So I think for these types of use cases, of course, we need business confidentiality and kind of similarities with privacy. But for the data, we don't have selective disclosure. We don't have these kind of requirements. We more have an audit requirement like transparency, auditability, disclosure. Yeah, we don't want to have non-disclosure and whatever, and zero or selective disclosure. This is not needed for this use case. And in other supply chain use cases, so adding the ZK proofs is not standardized. There are no crypto analysis. The cyber agencies such as NIST or the European cyber agencies, they don't endorse this. Yeah, and then it's really difficult to apply the technology. But also from practical terms of semantics, first you have to solve interoperability from data semantics, this is a very tough question in industry. And there's huge progress to solve the semantic question. But then to blend in another complexity, it's a huge complexity, selective disclosure, zero-knowledge proof, this will make people crazy. I think get the basics right first for compliance use cases, for transparency, for disclosure and not selective disclosure, and then add the ZK stuff later for these kind of use cases. That's a bit the strategy in the industry.
Interesting. And that makes a lot of sense.
I like the technology. Huh?
That makes a lot of sense because in an individual's case, maybe you're like, oh, they don't need to know my name or address. But like this is a serious industry where you're like you don't want to be like, oh, I don't want to share this information. You need to be as transparent as possible because sending medicines to different people can really affect their lives. Just highlighting a conversation that's happening here as well, just for people to know. Basically, one viewer basically mentioned about like mobile driver's license. Yeah, they're saying like you still need to, even though some states have adopted it, you still need to produce a like federal like a physical ID. But I know Angie has been using a mobile driver's license that she has because she lives in Louisiana, and she was also mentioning that some states are slow to catch up. Right now, there's about 12 states in the U.S. working on it, and we should see that get increased in the future. And also Aruba has a like travel credential to I don't know if it's pronounced Indico or Indicio, I'm not sure, but do that product. Let me see if I can highlight it right here, or no, that's not it, but it's right here it is.
So in Europe we have the so-called European digital identity wallets. And the idea of the European Commission is to give every citizen a digital wallet in their smartphone with identity card and driver license. And this is pretty awesome. And the European digital identity wallet is not only for people, it will be also for enterprises, so that enterprise get a digital identity to engage with whatever use case. And that's a big step forward in the European Union. And there are hundreds and hundreds of identity and cyber professionals working on this. They produce thousands and thousands of pages to standardize it, to check security, privacy, to enable interoperability, to make sure every European member state can issue such a wallet so that its level of assurance high, and then to use the leverage on Apple to make sure, and Apple on Google and Android and whatever, so when we have a European digital identity wallet, it must be level of assurance high. You must get in the most secure element of the phone, and usually this be controlled by the OEMs, by Apple and whatever, and Samsung. And for that reason, they must open their operating system to make sure that the European digital identity wallet gets to the most secure element on the phone to enable the use case. And that's also pretty interesting how this plays out.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. Oh, go ahead, Ebony.
Go on, finish.
I was just going to say, I love that you brought that up because that will segue into another question for me. And then I'll let Ebony ask more questions. Sorry, I don't want to take over. But my other question to you, and I know like we're coming up on time, so I don't know how much time you have. But what happened?
No, I'm saying the time's almost over. I didn't realize.
I don't know if you have a little bit of extra time, Carsten, because I would love to discuss more. Yeah. One of the questions that I was thinking of when you brought up the European digital wallet, when I joined TBD maybe about 6 months ago, and I was really impressed by how far Europe has gone in adopting like this idea of digital identity. I'm curious if you have any perspectives on like maybe what do you think is the difference between like Europe like adopting it so quickly and US being a little bit more slow to adopt it? What can we do on our side to help push it over to the end? I don't know.
That's a good question.
Nah.
Maybe I can give you a sheer, I think maybe I can give you a sheer number. It's not only the digital identity wallet, it's also in Europe we have I think on the The lawmakers, they're pushing very hard for identity, for cybersecurity, for sustainability, and for data sovereignty in Europe, yeah. And we have the European, it's really funny, we have the European Data Strategy and European Data Act and some other stuff. And the European Data Strategy is built on data sovereignty. And this is at the core of our data strategy in Europe, and a lot of laws, a lot of investments around this data strategy. And I don't know if you have heard about a project called Gaia-X. Gaia-X is establishing a software infrastructure for data sovereignty in the business, in the business domain, for aerospace defense, for utilities, for automotive supply chains, for scientific research, for whatever, for everything. And I think the number is the total amount of money spent, European Union and national governments, 8 billion euro on ecosystems, building out the ecosystems, 8 billion euro. And I think that's part of the big difference. So they spend big on the oil wallet, and they really mobilize a lot of the key experts. They streamline them in one direction, one common goal. Of course, it's not super fast because the experts have to discuss what's the architecture, what's the requirements, but it's pretty fast compared to other countries. And I think the clear focus, the amount of financial resources and human resources that have this common goal, data sovereignty, European digital identity, digitization of the industrial sector, I think this is enormous difference. Yeah.
Yeah, from what you're saying, it sounds like it is the money, because 8 billion euros on like those SSI projects and stuff like that would definitely do it. And that's 100% why we're not where you guys are.
I can give you the number for the automotive supply chain. We have a project called Catena-X. That's the most advanced project. And when I talked to the Ethereum people back in 2015, they said, oh, as they did all the blockchain stuff, whatever the market making, said, hey, we have this blockchain with smart contract, and Ethereum is the only game in town, yeah? And then people jumped on the Ethereum bandwagon. And this is kind of similar. The industrial internet with data sharing, data sovereignty, security, zero trust. So there's a lot of movement in Europe. And for example, Catena-X is one of these projects. They have a funding of 500 million, plus they just funded around 500 million, maybe a bit less or whatever, it's the order of magnitude. They founded an operating company also with a double-digit million to really push this forward. Catena-X has hubs in Mexico, US, Canada, has hubs in South Korea, Japan, and China. Because if you would like to solve the identity topic and secure data sharing for a global supply chain, you have to reach out to the other big companies and make sure they start to understand the standards, adopt the technology, integrate it in supply chain solutions. And this is a super big job. And I would say there's fantastic technology all around the globe, but this spending in developing complete ecosystems, this 8 billion or almost 8 billion, I think it's a bit less, but anyway, doesn't matter. I think this is unique. And then we can really say it's a kind of the ecosystem, the spanning the technology when there's no other game in town. And we get RFPs from China, from US that say us, if you would like to build a battery passport solution, make sure it's Catena-X compliant, And people ask us, hey, we are from South Korea, we know Catena-X, what's the alternative? And then we have to say, what the Ethereum people said, there is no other game in town.
No other game in town. Yeah. I love that. So it's basically like global adoption. You kind of answered a little bit of the next question I had. Since you're running like a large scale B2B company, and I know like funding is probably a big thing, but like what are factors that have been like critical to your success? Like two, because we don't have too much time. You're like your top 2 factors that have been critical to your success.
I think it's simplicity of the use case, So the pharma use case is super laser focused, super simple, and that's why it's the most advanced. Some other use cases are a factor of 1,000 more complex, and this is not a good start, but this is what Germans like to do. They like to start with complex stuff and like to engineer the things. But I think the simple use case and a business case, what I call it a symmetric business case, which means that the ecosystem actors, whether it's a manufacturer, wholesale dispenser, or an automotive supplier, tier 5 supplier, the automotive OEM or recycler, there must be a symmetric business case, because if, let's say, one of the players has a super cool business case, everyone else has to pay money, then it's not flying. I think a symmetric business case, which is the incentive. We don't have tokens in these things. We don't give, hey, use it and give you a bunch of tokens. Yeah, so there's no token economic incentive. So it must be the business case. It must be symmetric. And when you have a symmetric business case, then you have a complete ecosystem, and then you can come up with an adoption strategy. I think these things, yeah, simple use case, a symmetric business case where everyone gets a benefit, a complete ecosystem, and a clear adoption strategy. This is extremely important. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. We had a stream in the past where we got like, I'm so sorry, I'm talking too much. Where we got some like at the end, and I think it's kind of cool to the point that you said, because I think one of the tips was essentially like basically fill a need and like stick with it and like just keep driving it, and that's essentially what you said. Like you're filling a need, and it's a space that's already ahead in the pharmaceutical space. So thank you for that. Rizel, do we have any questions?
Can I show you? I would like to show you something.
Yeah,
when I talked about Gaia-X, Catena-X, and whatever, and about data sovereignty, I show you the architecture, and this is pretty funny. So this is basically the high-level architecture of Catena-X, which is the secure data sharing projects in the global automotive supply chain. And what they basically, at the core, they have identity wallets. Then they connect identity wallet to a so-called data space connector. But the data space connector is primarily a peer-to-peer communication protocol fully bound to an identity wallet. And then this is being kind of integrated with, that's being called an asset administration shell, but it's primarily a framework with semantic. They have an object, I can aggregate objects, I can combine I can combine components to a product. Let's say they have a weight, 15268 kilogram, and then I add the kilograms, the weight of the different components to the weight of the product. I can do this with product carbon footprint, I can do this with circularity, with product safety, and so on. So this is a big idea, to have all data being in a semantic description connected to an identity wallet for transactions with another ecosystem participants. It's kind of Alice, company A, and Bob, company B. And when Alice wants to get data from Bob, then Alice is sending a context, the context being analyzed by policy engines. Policy engine says, hey, you're an automotive recycler. Before I disclose the very sensitive data, how to recycle the object, prove to me that you're a recycler, send me your recycler credential. And then the recycler sends a recycler credential, and boom, it can be authenticated and authorized. And then the communication is being established. And here on the communication level, people start to use verifiable credentials. They don't only use them for the authentication authorization, the credentials in the wallets, but they also sign provenance assertions about objects, about products, and establish a digital product passport. Digital product passport is verifiable. And suddenly I can exchange verifiable assertions about my products in form of verifiable credentials. And that's pretty awesome, to use identity on the control plane for authentication authorization, but also on the data plane to establish data provenance in the industrial sector. And this is pretty awesome. And identity wallets are at the core. It's a kind of a different identity wallet. In this case, they don't use blockchain, but doesn't matter. It's a different setup. You integrate with your legacy systems, you set up a business application on top of it, and boom, you have a secure data sharing, process automation, compliance automation infrastructure, for industrial purposes. That's a bit what's being done in Catena-X. And then we do such cool things, such as the battery passport. Here we have a battery passport for the ultimum batteries and pushing the limits of transportation. So we work with a fantastic partner, SCS Global, that does global supply chain audits, and then I have a verifiable battery passport with child labor, greenhouse gas assertions, human rights, some basic data, technical data, and so on, and supply chain information. Maybe now I have this. By the way, what we see here, this goes back. Now this is all of this are public data. And now I would like to, I as Bob, sitting in front of the passport, I have to prove that I'm the recycler or whatever, And then I have to log in with my Catena-X credentials. I do this, and then I'm authorized, and then I get whatever, third-party supply chain assurance assertions, battery material components, design of circularity, performance durability, and that's basically the same use case as that we saw in pharma, but with much more data around it, because a battery is a much more complex product, and that's a bit what's being done in Catena-X in Europe, kind of to scale out the idea of decentralized identity, to establish data sovereignty, to make supply chains more secure, to adopt the NIST zero trust architecture principles, to increase the level of cybersecurity, and basically using the same technology for different use cases. It's pretty awesome what's being done in the industrial sector, I must say. Yeah.
That's really cool to me. Go ahead, Ebony. It looks like you have some thoughts.
No, I just feel like I feel like I've learned so much on this call. So I really appreciate you like diving in and giving us visuals. I'm a visual learner. So this has been amazing for me. I just want to make sure that we're not forgetting anybody's questions that we've gotten like in Discord and stuff like that. Rizel, are we like missing anything?
I don't see any, and I know Tanya has it like from the
okay.
LinkedIn and all of that. So I don't see any extra questions. I only have one last question before we moved into the fun stuff. Like the fun questions, I guess. And I wanted to say, Ebony, because you said you're talking too much. You weren't. If you saw me move, I was like relaxed. I was like, oh, okay.
I'm like, we're about to be here till 2 p.m.
No, I'll try to this last question, and then we'll move to the fun questions and we'll wrap it up. So another thing, right? AI is the wave right now. I'm really into AI as well. And I know you posted on LinkedIn that you're doing a partnership with NVIDIA. You're doing something with AI and the coalition of content provenance and authenticity. And I'm really interested in this because I had a discussion, like I did a workshop and people were asking me about this and I didn't know all the answers. They were like, how will we be able to show like that content is real and authentic and not generated by AI or not a deep fake? And I'm curious if you know, or how is your partnership with NVIDIA and the coalition of content? Well, I don't remember what it's called. How is that all going together?
Long name.
Yeah.
So what I think most use cases are pretty physical in terms of battery, in terms of the pharmaceutical products. It's always about authenticity and provenance, And of course, if you think about what scales fast, of course, if you have physical analog to digital interfaces, like I have an analog thing and the battery, I have to connect it, I have to scan it, API, a human has to do something. This can scale because there's a lot of physical infrastructure. If you retrofit, it's fully scaled. But if you apply the same ideas and principles for digital content, this can scale much faster. I think the problem of generative AI, authenticity of data and documents is now exploding, because I can fake everything in milliseconds, super high quality. I can hyper-personalize every content, Whoever my counterparty is, I can immediately hyper-personalize fake content at any time, for any person, for any context. And this is pretty dangerous, I think the only way is kind of to have content, to have the authenticity of the content. I basically hash it, I put a provenance credential, an authenticity credential in a container that's linked to the content. And that's basically what the content coalition of content coalition of provenance and authenticity is doing. They're defining the standards, how to put authenticity and content provenance assertions to a JPEG file, to a zip file, into the PDF, so that I can do this. And then I can have an entire provenance chain and companies such as Nikon, Leica, Canon, they're also starting to bring, let's say, wallets in their cameras, or at least in their cloud infrastructure, that I know when I took a picture, where was it taken, which camera, what are the GPS coordinates, and then the picture is being put kind of, let's say, to a journalist, an editor, Adobe Firefly, and then it's being edited, then I can put some other content provenance information into the C2PA container, basically saying, hey, this was edited by Adobe Firefly, only kind of to make the sky a little bit brighter or whatever. And then every consumer can then check the entire data processing chain, And this is pretty awesome. Of course, you can, let's say, a bad actor can just rip off all the content data and then whatever, or take a screenshot and put some other data. I think there are some practical things, but in the end, if there's a trust model, if there's infrastructures can be fixed. And Meta and OpenAI, they adopted the C2PA standards already. When you go to DALI-E, then you have C2PA information in the DALI-E credentials, because the Safe AI regulation, you have the consumer has the right to know so which AI model produced it, and Meta and OpenAI adopting the technology already. This is pretty awesome. Yeah.
That's exciting. Sorry, go ahead, Ebony.
No, I just feel like that's crazy because I was struggling with my camera today. So just to hear about how like they're gonna add like things are being added to it, I'm like,
yeah,
whoa.
they're gonna add wallets. That's wild.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that OpenAI and all these other like AI companies, Meta and all that, are adopting some of these technologies. Yeah, I did see that. I did see that message, and I'll probably learn it on the stream. Yeah, it's a good question. It stands for
comments. People can answer in the comments. Like if you guys have any links that this person can use, you can just add them in the comments to help out while we go to the fun stuff.
Yeah. So quick questions. Yeah, feel free to help learner. Quick fun questions before we fully wrap up. What is your favorite food?
My favorite food, I like Thai food most.
Ooh. I like Thai food too.
What about you, Ebony? Is that your favorite or?
Not my favorite. I just love pasta. Like that's it. It can be in any way, any form. Pasta is my favorite thing. But I do love Thai food. Thai food's really good.
I love both of what y'all brought up. Like Thai food is the thing that like me and Derek could both. That's like where we go on dates a lot because like I'm vegetarian, he eats meat, and like that's where we both like this food. Other question is, if you could have any superpower, what superpower would you want to have?
I would like to have superpower to make people to understand what the right things are and make people doing the right things, because people around the globe are doing a lot of wrong things, and this is destroying the planet and leading to war, and kind of having superpower to and enlightenment to know what's right and to make people do the right things. This would be cool. Yeah.
I love that. Give people
to save the planet.
That makes me think of like as a mom, like I want that superpower. Give that to my 2-year-old. Like, that's dangerous. Not do that. No. For me, I think I don't know, time traveling. I feel like that's just something I would love to do. Like I would like to just go into like different like times.
I'm more Bitcoins.
Yeah. That's
do the pizza transaction, Ebony. Let's do the time traveling and do the pizza transaction for 9,000 Bitcoin. Yeah?
Oh, smart. I'm on board with that one.
Make some money out of it. There is a question now. Andre said, does the platform support the tbDEX method? I'm not sure it would, because our this is a method we made. Are you flexible on the DID methods for
No, we're super flexible on DID method, but we haven't integrated yet. Yeah. But I think it's a good DID method. Yeah, I think I need to do more research on it. Yeah.
I have a video to share with you.
Excellent.
Another question that I guess I missed. Brazil has a huge potential regarding SSI use cases. Do you intend to do any work in Brazil, and how can we reach out to you?
Good.
You can all the time reach out to me. Don't know if you can share something. My LinkedIn profile, just reach out on LinkedIn to me, and I'm happy to follow up.
Yeah, you're very responsive. I messaged you and you messaged back. I was like, I don't know, he's a CEO, he might be busy. Let me place his LinkedIn here. I was like, oh my God, he answered.
Love that.
Do you have any last things that you want to leave us with, Carsten? Maybe things that people should check out, like links or promo, or just any last thoughts? And then Ebony, you too, before we go.
Okay, yeah. No, I feel like this was a really good, like my first stream. It was nice to speak with you, Carsten. Like I loved all the visuals, like I said earlier. And then seeing all the conversations. This was just a really, really nice stream. So thank you for having me, Rizel.
No, it was fun having you. I'm like, it was a good dynamic. It's fun.
How about you?
I loved the atmosphere. I loved the atmosphere and the discussion with you guys. Yeah, I had a great time. Thanks for having me as well.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for everybody in the audience for asking great questions too. You guys always ask really good questions.
Yes.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing your knowledge with us, Carsten. This was really great, and your time. I know you're probably busy. Yeah, echoing Ebony. Love the questions, love the engagement from everyone. See y'all next week. Bye.
Bye.